Based in Djibouti as the spokesperson for His Excellency, the Executive Secretary, His Excellency Dr. Wakne Gebeyehu. This morning, we are gathered here following the just concluded 7th general election in the Federal Republic of Ethiopia. We had our observers deployed in various regions within the Federal Republic of Ethiopia. Collectively, the African Union, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, deployed a number of observers in various regions, including Amhara, Oromia, Sidama, Somali, and many other cities. Excellencies, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, former President of Kenya and the head of the Observation Mission of the African Union, deputized by His Excellency Geoffrey Onyeama, former Foreign Affairs Minister of Nigeria, His Excellency Bankole Adoye, Commissioner of Political Affairs, AU, Peace and Security at AU Commission, Her Excellency Dr. Spekiosa Wandira Kazibwe, head of the IGAD Election Observation Mission, deputized by His Excellency Mohammed Ali Mohammed Hamoud. Welcome to this session. This morning is a very brief session. We will get to hear about the preliminary reports that will be issued by the two institutions, that is the African Union and the Intergovernmental Authority on Development. The two heads of mission will talk to us and give us the preliminary findings. In this room, we are represented by a number of persons, including various government and national agencies represented in the room, diplomatic missions present, observers from the two institutions, AU and IGAD, civil society organizations, members of the press, Friends of Ethiopia, and many others other stakeholders who are in this room. After we have heard the two speeches, this session is for the members of the press. You have an opportunity to ask questions, seek clarification on any of the statements made, and thereafter we will come to the close of the session. So at this particular moment, allow me to hand over the microphone to Her Excellency Dr. Spekiosa Wandira Kazibwe, who is the head of the IGAD Election Observation Mission, and of course, the former president of Uganda. Karibu sana.
Is this the one?
Yes, it's on.
Yes. I am the former vice president of Uganda. And it is better to be in that position than in this one.
My sincere apologies, former vice president.
It's more enjoyable to be former than current. Your Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, the former president of the Republic of Kenya and head of the AU Election Observer Mission to Ethiopia, deputized by the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Nigeria, His Excellency Geoffrey Onyeama, my colleague who has been working with me as part of the IGAD mission, my deputy, the former Speaker, President of the National Assembly of Djibouti, His Excellency Muhammad Ali Hamoud, Your Excellency Bankole Adoye, the Commissioner of the AU Political Affairs, Peace and Security Commission, colleagues, members of the press, diplomatic missions, I should say, protocol observed. I'm speaking on behalf of the IGAD Election Observation Mission to the 7th General Election of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, which was held on Monday, the 1st of June, 2026. The Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, Election Observation Mission was deployed to Ethiopia to observe the country's 7th general election held on the 1st of June, 2026. The mission was invited by the government of Ethiopia and the National Election Board of Ethiopia, NEBE, underscoring Ethiopia's commitment to regional cooperation and transparency in its electoral processes. The 7th general election also represents a significant milestone in Ethiopia's democratic and electoral evolution and is widely characterized as an election of many firsts, owing to the introduction of major institutional, administrative, and technological reforms. The IGAD Election Observation Mission is led by myself, the former Vice President of the Republic of Uganda, and deputized by His Excellency Mohammed Ali Humed, former President of the National Assembly of the Republic of Djibouti. The mission comprises 26 short-term observers drawn from across the IGAD member states, representing election management bodies, women, and youth groups. The mission observed the electoral processes in 7 regions and city administrations and engaged key stakeholders, including officials from the National Election Board of Ethiopia, the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, political parties, civil society organizations, women and youth observer groups. The mission conducted its observation in accordance with the Ethiopian electoral legal frameworks, the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, and the International Declaration of Principles for International Election Observation and other relevant regional and international standards. This IGAD Election Observation Mission's preliminary report provides a professional and impartial assessment of the election's conduct, highlighting key observations and offering constructive recommendations to further strengthen Ethiopia's electoral process. Our preliminary findings. 1. Political and electoral context. The 7th general election in Ethiopia took place amid political transformation, certain political and security issues, and due to security concerns, elections were not held in Tigray and in some parts of the Amhara region. At the same time, Ethiopia is in the process of conducting national dialogue and pursuing reform initiatives to foster national consensus, strengthen peace building, and consolidate democratic governance. The legal framework. The fundamental laws include the Constitution of 1995, Proclamation number 1162/2019, establishing the Electoral Code, and Proclamation number 1133 of 2019, which establishes the National Election Board of Ethiopia. Key regulations include the campaign finance rules and the penal code. Recent amendments and directives introduced digital voter validation technology, empowered NEBE to suspend non-compliant political parties, and established a re-registration framework to help former insurgent groups transition to peaceful politics. There was also an expansion of inclusive representation by lowering age limits. Individuals who reach the age of 18 by election day are eligible to register to vote, while those who reach age 21 years by election day may stand as candidates. Administration of the elections and its management. A total of 54,057,861 voters were registered. Approximately 5.3 million were digitally registered and 45.1 million were manually registered. Women accounted for 46% and men at 54% of those that registered for the election. The election was held across 501 of 547 constituencies and at approximately 52,000 polling stations nationwide. In total, 42 political parties, including coalition formations, participated in the electoral process with over 10,000 candidates contesting seats in the House of People's Representatives, regional, states, and city administration councils. The IGAD mission noted that NEBE demonstrated considerable administrative and operational capacity in preparing and conducting the 2026 general election. NEBE recruited, trained, and deployed over 195,000 election officials, operationalized approximately 52,000 polling stations across the 501 constituencies that participated in the election exercise. They also implemented extensive voter education, stakeholder engagement, and political party support programs. The mission further noted that the election introduced several institutional and technological innovations, including digital voter and candidate registration, geographic information system-based polling station mapping, hybrid voter registration, and special voting arrangements for internally displaced persons and Ethiopia National Defense Forces personnel. Major and institutional technological firsts. The 7th Ethiopian general election marked a major reform in electoral administration, introducing several institutional and technological firsts that enhanced efficiency, inclusivity, and integrity. The National Election Board of Ethiopia launched the locally developed Mirichae, which means My Choice, digital voter registration system, enabling over 5 million citizens to self-register online using their national IDs across multiple platforms. For the first time, candidates and political parties registered digitally, while more than 7,000 polling stations were mapped using GIS technology to improve accessibility and management. A hybrid registration system combining manual and digital processes broadened participation, and special polling frameworks were established for internally displaced persons and members of the Ethiopian National Defense Forces, ensuring greater inclusivity in the electoral process. The IGAD Election Observation Mission commends NEBE for these innovations, which contributed towards modernization, accessibility, inclusivity, and efficiency in the electoral administration. I now go to positive observations and best practices. The mission observed several commendable practices during electoral process. 1, enhanced voter education. NEBE accredited 169 civil society organizations to undertake voter education activities nationwide, with 114 organizations receiving financial support to target women, youth, rural communities, and persons living with disability. 2, media access and airtime allocation. NEBE, in collaboration with the Ethiopian Media Authority, allocated free campaign airtime through a transparent lottery system involving television, radio, print, and multilingual broadcasting platforms. The campaign airtime was allocated to 66 broadcast channels as follows: 24 radio stations. The 24 radio stations were able to distribute 782 hours. 20 TV stations gave up 570 hours, and 6 newspapers gave up 576 news columns, while 16 subsidiary channels and broadcasts in different languages were also facilitated. The platforms were meant to promote parties and candidates in disseminating their election agenda, especially to vulnerable groups. Now I come to transparent ballot processes. Public ballot lotteries were conducted to determine party symbols and candidate order on the ballot papers. This enhances transparency and stakeholder confidence. Then we come to stakeholder coordination. Regular engagement between NEBE, political parties, civil society organizations, media stakeholders, security agencies contributed to coordinated electoral preparation and improved communication among all the stakeholders. Election security coordination. The mission observes the collaborative election security framework, which involves NEBE, political parties, civil society organizations, and security agencies. This framework includes categorizing constituencies based on security risk levels and creating joint coordination mechanisms to handle emerging security issues. Now I come to our areas of concern. While noting the progress achieved, the mission identified several areas that would benefit from continued attention and further strengthening. Security challenges. Security concerns in parts of Amhara and Tigray regions affected the conduct of elections in some of the constituencies. 8 constituencies in the Amhara region and 38 in the Tigray region did not participate in the electoral process. Women participation. Despite commendable progress in promoting women's participation and empowerment, women remain underrepresented among electoral candidates compared to their proportion of registered voters and the general population. Their representation in leadership roles, including as polling station managers, also remains limited. Electoral dispute resolution. The NEBE handles unresolved disputes, including political party leaders, leadership fights, campaign violations, or mass fraud investigations. And here we would recommend in this area that a lot still needs to be done in this, especially at the polling station area. So federal High Court specialized electoral benches handle the final appeals challenging NEBE decisions. The Federal Supreme Court acts as the final stop, reviewing only critical errors of law. I now come to Election Day polling observations. The IGAD mission deployed 26 observers into 11 teams in the 7 regions and cities of the country out of the total 12 regions and 2 cities, namely Amhara, Oromia, Sidama, Somali, and South Ethiopia regional states, and then Addis Ababa and Dire Dawa city administrations to observe the opening, the voting, and closing and counting on election day. The IGAD observers visited 208 urban peri-urban, and rural polling stations across the 7 regional states and city administrations. The mission observed polling processes across multiple polling stations and noted the following. 1, poll opening. Poll opening was observed in 11 polling stations, all of which opened on time and had sufficient voting materials and personnel. Observers noted orderly, long, and I want to say long queues and peaceful participation in most polling stations. I want to repeat this sentence because I have observed in many countries and I have not seen this. The long queues, people arrived before 5 a.m. The stations were to open at 6, and our observers were there also by 5:30, and people, the Ethiopians, were there. In all the polling stations observed, ballot boxes were correctly sealed. The setup of the polling stations allowed for the free flow of voters and guaranteed the security of the vote. Election materials. In all the polling stations visited, polling materials were sufficient and available throughout the polling period. When it came to election officials, most of these officials were 5 to 6 in number, and on average, only 2 were women. I'm sure when I say that, you'll excuse me. Only 2 were women. Yes. Then when it came to candidates, agents, and observers, political party agents were present in all polling stations visited. Party agents from the Prosperity Party were present in all polling stations visited. Other regional party agents were present in some polling stations in the different regions. Domestic observers from civil society organizations and youth groups were present in most polling stations visited. The Coalition of Ethiopian Civil Society Organization for Election, the largest domestic coalition civil society organization, deployed a nationwide election observation mission across the country and operated a centralized situation room to receive, verify, analyze, and respond to information from its field observers in real time. The Ethiopia Human Rights Commission deployed observers in different regions and cities across the country and has a situation room to gather information and report incidents during the electoral process. When it came to the voting process, all observers reported that the voting process went smoothly with no incidents reported. The elderly, women with children, and persons with disability were given first priority to vote. Most of the polling stations visited had chairs available for voters as they waited to vote, and coffee was provided. Thank you very much, people of Ethiopia. You should clap for yourselves, those who are here, because we have observed, I have observed, I won't speak for my president here, in many, even water is not provided, but coffee, which is, thank you very much. So, and in some places, even kolo was also provided. The voter turnout. Observers reported high voter turnout throughout the day, with the long queues at many polling stations visited. The women and elderly voters constituted the majority of voters in the morning, while youth participation increased in the afternoon. The maximum number of voters per polling station is capped at 1,500. I come to the participation of women. Women participated as polling officials, candidates, party agents, and observers. The Ethiopian Women's Federation had observers present in most of the polling stations we visited. Women's organization had this situation room where they reported that they had deployed observers in different areas within the country to monitor women's participation in this election. These organizations included the Ethiopian Women Lawyers Association and Timran, which means she leads a women-led civil society organization. When it came to youth participation, the youth of Ethiopia participated as polling officials, candidates, party agents, observers, volunteers, and situation room personnel. And I want to commend them for those who participated as observers, because they did a lot of work in the management around the polling stations, directing people where they should go, and they were well labeled. We are observers, and when we arrived, they also would welcome us to the polling station. The Ethiopian Youth Federation observers were present in most of the polling stations visited. Now, when it comes to security personnel, mainly police, were present at all polling stations visited. They were both male and female, and their presence was professional and non-intrusive. I come to the closing and counting process. When it came to the gazetted time of 6 p.m., there were still long queues of voters at the closing time of polling stations, particularly in Addis Ababa and Dire Dawa. Accordingly, NEBE extended the closing time of polling stations by 6 hours. However, inconsistencies were observed in the implementation of the extended time due to information flow from NEBE head office to the local polling stations in the regions. I come to our preliminary assessment of election day. On election day, election officials, security personnel, political and human rights actors, and citizens largely discharged their responsibilities with professionalism, enabling voters to freely express their democratic rights during voting despite the long polling hours. The IGAD Election Observation Mission commends the commitment of the Ethiopian people for staying for those long hours until after midnight to cast their vote and to exercise their democratic rights. Our recommendations to NEBE: continue strengthening and institutionalizing digital electoral infrastructure, including voter registration and election management systems to enhance efficiency and credibility. 2, we recommend the enhancement of the capacity of electoral officials through more capacity building and training on electoral processes and the Ethiopian electoral laws. We recommend the standardizing and simplifying of the voter identification system. Consider reducing the number of voters to a maximum of 1,000 voters per polling station. The 1,000 is still many, because if you go into the number and the human element in the managers, think here 1,000 is still too many. But we recommend, because we know it is a program in motion and it also has financial implications, but effectively we are saying make the number of voters, reduce them, so that per polling station, as per international best practices, and increase the number of the people who are managing the process at that level. Enhance cybersecurity and data protection measures to safeguard the electoral information systems and maintain public confidence in the integrity of the electoral process. Here we know in countries, especially those of us sitting here, that we had some mishaps, Your Excellency, in this system. So this is why we are also saying, as the NEBE moves there, let them include that cyber security right from the beginning to make sure that the electoral process integrity is not compromised. Enhance voter education and civic awareness programs, particularly in remote, underserved, and historically low participation areas to promote informed and inclusive electoral participation. This is to the political parties. We recommend that the parties invest in continuous voter outreach, civic engagement, and issue-based campaigning to strengthen public trust and promote informed participation in the democratic process. The parties should also enhance the capacity of party agents, candidates, and party officials on electoral laws, procedures, and dispute resolution mechanisms to improve compliance and reduce election-related grievances. We also recommend to the parties to promote peaceful political competition by adhering to the Electoral Code of Conduct, respecting election outcomes, and utilizing established legal and institutional mechanisms to address disputes and complaints. We also recommend the introduction of a policy to encourage women participation as candidates. And here I want to, because all of you are the political actors and the media, you are a very important political actor. If you don't do affirmative action for women, you men are not ready to give up the power space. So this has to be made in the law, affirmative action for women and the youth, because it is also their right to be at the table, be it at the parliamentary, at the national level, but also in the regions. They are the ones who nurture you, so they should participate in these election processes as candidates and managers as well, in numbers commensurate with their demographic contribution to the population of Ethiopia. To the security agencies, thank you for what you did. Please maintain the highest standards of neutrality, professionalism, and impartiality, because you did it. We observed it. Commit to providing a secure and conducive environment for voters, candidates, election officials, observers, and other stakeholders to participate freely and safely in electoral activities. Strengthen coordination and information sharing with NEBE and other relevant institutions to support timely responses to security incidents and emerging electoral risks. We also ask you to enhance community engagement and conflict prevention measures, particularly in areas vulnerable to tension, to promote peaceful participation and to mitigate election-related disputes. To the civil society organization, strengthen coordination, collaboration, and convergence among the civil society organizations engaged in electoral processes to maximize impact, minimize duplication of efforts, and promote coherent support to electoral stakeholders. We also say that you should continue supporting voter education, civic awareness, and public engagement initiatives, particularly among the women, youth, persons with disability, and other underrepresented groups. We also call upon you, civil society organizations, to enhance domestic election observation. As you noted, apart from one political party, the Prosperity Party, the observers that were there in other parties were not there. But to our knowledge as veteran politicians, they come, the civil society organizations are the nurturing groups for people who are interested in the welfare of people, so they upgrade into observation and also as the election agents for the different parties. So this one, as civil society organizations, you should really make sure that this is also done. And also, as civil society organizations, we recommend that you foster dialogue, peace building and conflict prevention initiatives before, during and after elections to promote peaceful political participation and strengthen public confidence in the democratic processes. To the government of Ethiopia as a stakeholder, we recommend that government strengthens the overall electoral ecosystem by providing adequate institutional, legal, financial, and logistical support to NEBE and other relevant bodies to ensure efficient and credible election management at all times. That it promotes sustained investment in democratic governance, provides civic space and inclusive political participation, ensuring that all citizens, especially marginalized groups, can meaningfully engage in the electoral process. We call upon government to support continued modernization of electoral systems, including digital infrastructure and innovation, while ensuring equitable access across all regions to reduce disparities in electoral service delivery. We also call upon government to encourage multi-stakeholder collaboration among government institutions, political actors, security agencies, civil society organizations, and the media to reinforce transparency, trust, and peaceful democratic consolidation. We also call upon our international partners to continue supporting the people of Ethiopia in the road to self-determination in the spirit of Ethiopian solutions to Ethiopian problems. In conclusion, I would like to say that the IGAD Election Observation Mission commends the people of the government of the people of Ethiopia, its government, the National Electoral Body of Ethiopia, and other electoral actors for conducting successful elections and their collective commitment to a peaceful electoral process. The 7th general election represents a notable milestone in Ethiopia's democratic and electoral development, particularly the introduction of major technological and institutional reforms aimed at improving election administration and enhancing the inclusivity and credibility of electoral participation. The IGAD mission further extends its sincere congratulations to the government and the people of Ethiopia for the generally peaceful and orderly conduct of the electoral process, which underscores a shared national commitment to stability, constitutionalism, and democratic progress. IGAD reaffirms its commitment to supporting the government and the people of Ethiopia in promoting democracy, good governance, credible elections, and the respect for human rights. IGAD stands with its member states in this important undertaking. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Her Excellency Dr. Wandira Speciosa, former Vice President of the Republic of Uganda. Thank you so much for that, and I want to say we all appreciated the coffee that was granted to us. We went to Constituency 17, Wadera 3, Shala Park polling station, and indeed we were offered coffee and cola. So thank you. True hospitality of the Ethiopian people. We are grateful. And now we'd like to hand over the microphone to His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, former President of Kenya and the head of mission of the AU IGAD Election Observation Mission. Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. For the sake of time, let me just say all protocols observed. And I will go through an abridged version of our preliminary statement. At the end of this press conference, the fuller version of our preliminary statement will be distributed to everybody, all members of the media, where you can see a fuller version. But for now, I will only just go through a shortened, abridged version. The fuller version will be available. Secretariat will circulate to all of you who are here. I begin by saying that as part of its commitment to advancing democratic consolidation in the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, the African Union Election Observation Mission was deployed from the 26th May to the 3rd of June 2026 to observe the 7th general election and to assess their compliance with applicable international, regional, normative frameworks, as well as Ethiopia's legal framework governing democratic elections. The mission was led by myself and ably supported by His Excellency Geoffrey Oyama, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The mission was preceded by a pre-election assessment mission that was conducted from the 16th to the 20th of March to observe the pre-election environment and to assess the state of preparations for the election, and that team was led by His Excellency Oyama. And during its deployment, the mission engaged with key stakeholders, including the National Election Board of Ethiopia, government institutions, supporting the electoral process, political parties, civil society organizations, citizen observer groups, and representatives of diplomatic and international community, the United Nations, and head of election observation missions. This we also did when we arrived. So therefore, based on observations and stakeholder consultations conducted since arrival, our mission presents its preliminary findings, noting that the electoral process remains ongoing. Noting the significant strides made towards the consolidation of democracy, the mission further highlights the following commendable practices observed at this preliminary stage, while recognizing that the electoral process remains ongoing. The electoral environment on election day was generally calm, with voting proceeding in an orderly manner and voters being processed steadily across most polling stations observed. This provided an opportunity for voters to cast their vote unhindered. The introduction of technology, as was mentioned in voter registration, to complement manual registration processes, potentially contributed to the increased number of registered voters, specifically young people accustomed to using this technology. The high level of compliance with key voting procedures, i.e. ballot sealing, voter identification, stamping, ink marking, potentially contributed to generally predictability and consistency in the administration of the election day. Polling officials and security personnel exhibited professionalism and preparedness, which reflected a commitment on the part of NEBE to assert impartiality in the administration of election day processes. And indeed, most importantly, citizens did show strong commitment to vote, reflected in sustained and patient queuing throughout the day, demonstrating their commitment to democratic participation. There was broad and visible deployment of domestic observer teams, party agents, and media across multiple regions, which exhibited a willingness on the part of election authorities to subject their administration of election day to public scrutiny and accountability. Essential election materials were available in all polling stations observed, which suggested adequacy of the logistical preparations for the elections. Extension of voting hours to allow additional voter participation, potentially enfranchised voters who could have been excluded if balloting had been confined to the original 12 hours. Voter education support at polling stations provided voters with guidance on how to cast their ballot. Not who to cast it for, but how. I want to make that clear. The provision of basic amenities, as again was mentioned, for voters in queues such as chairs, benches, refreshments, in some cases made the long queues more bearable for the voter. Prioritization of elderly and persons with disabilities showed recognition of the value of universal access in democratic governance. The AU mission, acknowledging that democracy is an ongoing process, the mission also highlights the following areas where refinements could further enhance the integrity and efficiency of the electoral process. The mission noted the suspension of polling in 46 constituencies, notably in the Tigray and Amhara regions, which potentially affected the inclusiveness of the electoral process and undermined the full exercise of the right to vote due to the prevailing security situation. The mission acknowledges the commitment made by NEBE to ensure that elections would proceed in these excluded constituencies once the environment became conducive. The threshold of 1,500 registered voters per polling station did not facilitate optimal workload management and efficiency in the management of the polling process. The size and capacity of polling stations in some instances did not facilitate the smooth voter movement, potentially undermining secrecy of the ballot. The pace of processing of voters slowed down in order to facilitate clarification of the voting process to the voter. Low levels of voter registration of women, notwithstanding there being the higher demography, suggested some marginalization of vulnerable constituencies. Fully recognizing the electoral process is still ongoing at this stage, the AU mission offers the following summary and preliminary recommendations. The first of these is revive and standardize the threshold of registered voters per polling station to ensure optimal workload management and efficiency. 1,500 people per polling station is undoubtedly too high. Improve consistency in polling station layouts, particularly the positioning of voting booths and ballot boxes, to enhance secrecy and orderly flow of votes. To ensure adequate size and capacity of polling stations to facilitate smooth voter movements and sufficient accommodation of election observers, election agents, and the strengthening and standardizing of voter education efforts across all polling stations to ensure consistency in voter understanding of procedures. We also suggest that there is need to explore opportunities to enhance equitable representation and deployment of party agents from all contesting political parties to strengthen transparency and competitiveness. To promote and further strengthen women participation, particularly in the voter registration process. And political parties, particularly those contesting at national and regional levels, should strengthen the deployment of trained party agents across polling stations to enhance transparency, improve oversight of the electoral procedures, and contribute to a more competitive electoral environment. In conclusion, and to further strengthen democratic consolidation, the mission encourages the government of Ethiopia and all stakeholders to promote inclusive and sustained political dialogue as a means of fostering national consensus and trust among political actors. Such dialogue should aim to facilitate political inclusion and the participation of all communities in the democratic governance of the country. In this regard, efforts should be made to create an enabling environment that supports pluralism, enhances equitable political participation, and promotes the integration of all diverse groups within national political and governance process. The African Union Election Observation Mission remains seized with the outstanding electoral processes and reasserts its commitment to supporting Ethiopia in consolidating democratic governance. The final African Union Observation Mission report on the 7th general election of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia will be released 30 days after the declaration of the final results. On a personal note, I want to once again reiterate that today is a day that the people of Ethiopia should be proud. Today is a day you should remember your history, a nation that stood against the wave of colonialism, united and never colonized. Never forget that, never colonized. A nation that stood for Africa's independence and for Africa's right to self-governance and rule. A nation, as a result of this, that has become the capital of Africa. Therefore, from today, the way forward can only be one, and it is simple. That a great nation like Ethiopia should take advantage of this moment to move and further deepen political and social dialogue amongst her peoples. Bring on board those who might feel left behind and become that inclusive, united Ethiopia that was once the beacon of hope for our entire continent. Ethiopia to become that nation that leads Africa to the next stage of a truly independent, democratic continent, guided by her principles of inclusive growth and capable of living to our vision of African solutions to African problems through dialogue and compromise and not war. capable of leading present and future generations into an age of peace, stability, and prosperity for all. I believe Ethiopia can do this, and I leave Addis Ababa with a hope for the future and inspired by the many young men and women who formed the bulk of our observation mission. Congratulations to each and every one of you. It was happy and a joy to work with all of you. May God bless Ethiopia. May God bless Africa. And like I said, a fuller version of our mission's statement, pre-statement, will be available for distribution at the end of this press conference. I thank you.